Welcome, all friends. This is, I have been away for quite some time. My last Dhamma call was somewhere in December that I did on this meditative experience that Buddha described on the Majjhima Nikaya, with Sariputta being an example. So I went through all these stages of what we call the purification of mind, and arriving at that sort of a state of mind where even the state of mind becomes it finds no support. All the dependence fall apart, and even mind doesn't find any support, and it dives into that state of cessation. So I covered that, and how we can go through that same experiences through this practice of what is called developing this samatha and vipassana in the conjoined manner. So that was the previous call, and today I am slightly going outside the territory of Dhamma, and I am also exploring what other alternative views, world views, and the philosophies, scientific explorations that are trying to answer the same questions. What is the reality? What is the experience that we have is all about? What it boils down into, and are there really is there really a one way to arrive and at that sort of a conclusion as to what the truth is, or how we can be kind of have that sort of a perspective of whether it really matters to have that sort of a very rigorous scientific path of inquiry into this nature of reality, or is it going to lead to more and more speculation, more and more kind of a state of mental proliferation, too many conceptualization, and what is the end? And this is the question I'm trying to address here. And although it is a tall order, I really think that this is a momentous task to comprehend all these sort of ideas and concepts, and that sort of, and to give that sort of balanced perspective. So I will not try to claim too much from this call today, but what I would like to certainly do is to bring forward some perspective as to how we can reconcile those sort of seemingly contradictory views of the world from the let's say purely materialistic or scientific physicalistic perspective, as well as more what is called the what sometimes people might call it mystical, or the sort of spiritual or direct experiential perspectives. So it's really where there is a kind of, what is the ultimate kind of truth, and whether we can arrive at that sort of a conclusion through either of those paths. Yeah. And what I would like to do is, I would like to pick up this let's say exploration by gradually picking up some of the topics. So I'll start with some of the exploration of those scientific, the kind of I'll put together physics, the sort of biology, that sort of development in science into one category, and the recent, what is called recent development, even within the scientific communities, by those modern thinkers, philosophers, scientists who are challenging that sort of let's say the traditional views that the science is the ultimate kind of tool to arrive at this truth. So, and I'll go through some names like like Sir Martin Rees, who has he has hosted a very popular series documentary in the in a television channel 4 series which is called What We Still Don't Know. That's a very thought-provoking documentary series where he sort of asked that sort of questions. Then I will go through some of those recent scientific explorers like Leonard Susskind. We have that sort of Andrew Linde, that's Max Tegmark, Sean Carroll, and then I will go to explore those views from more kind of, let's say, more shall I say, kind of a scientists who are challenging the notion of those physical, the kind of a materialistic worldview of experiences. Yeah, so I would probably I'll try to cover quite a lot about Professor Donald Hoffman's work on the theory of consciousness and how consciousness is, let's say, maybe consciousness is more, let's say, fundamental than the space-time or the materials. Then recently I have been, I am coming to very, I am surprisingly, I'm finding the views from philosophers like Bernardo Castroff, whose view of analytical idealism, which has made me quite a, it has made a good impression as to there are thinkers who are coming really close to kind of at least scratch the itch is what this reality, what is this our mind and body, let's say mind and body mechanism, it ultimately boils down into. Yeah. So it's a quite I have got a very busy agenda, so let's say, and I hope I can cover quite a good number of those through this call. It's I would not want to go into much greater detail on those specific, let's say, very kind of specialized technical details, and I would like to keep it very, let's say, high level, more kind of receptive to common understandings, and I will try to blend it to to my understanding, because I have I have got a that sort of understanding in terms of how the physical phenomena we can make use of those sort of properties of matter and space and time to explore that sort of a dimension of cutting edge scientific achievements to arrive at this current day technologies. So I have got a really good, let's say, view on that. But recently I have started to think that where is that, where do we draw a line from this never-ending kind of a quest that is gonna lead to so all these discoveries, that this sort of contribution in this top scientific journals and the conferences, they are adding very minor kind of dots into this exploration of these vast subject areas, and one might be successful in the pursuit and arrive at that sort of discovery, groundbreaking discoveries, and that might push our boundaries further into that sort of making our life slightly more, let's say, convenient. And that is a kind of a drive that the scientific communities have to pursue their exploration in that sort of very relentless and perhaps aggressive manner. Yeah. So and I am part of that community, and I do publish some original research and that sort of I impart them in easily available manner to kind of to show to the world that here you go, these are the current approaches, and you can go beyond, and you can think about this sort of a perspective, and you can solve those problems by making those sort of enhancements. So most of the research, 99% of research are somewhat living in that sort of boundary of tweaking those sort of let's say, tweaking those existing techniques, the technologies, and giving slightly better alternative. So this is what the science is all about, and among those millions of, I would say probably hundreds of thousands of scientists around the world, there are only, you can probably name a few, you can count them in fingers. Those are really who are radical in their approach, and who are coming to challenge that sort of established notion around the space-time, around our perception of the world, the reality, the nature of consciousness, and so on. And they are making that sort of breaking, let's say, discoveries that seem to have kind of made a kind of a quantum, shall I say, a giant leap. So we have come from that sort of, let's say, a very established worldview that was led by Newton in mid 1500 centuries, to say until that sort of established notion were broken by the scientists like Einstein. We have got that sort of who challenged that notion that gravity cannot be bound to certain space-time framework, and he challenged that notion that the space-time is the kind of immutable fabric of our reality, of our all the experiences. And he brought that sort of notion that, space-time has to give up against that sort of higher reality that, then he brought up that sort of notion of space-time curvature and that sort of relativity, the notion of relativity and so on. Yeah. And there is and we are now living in a very interesting time as the foundation of Einstein's general relativity and is a kind of it is right time now to let go of that sort of notion of, let's say, space-time being fundamental and going beyond the domain of space-time into higher domain, let's say. I'm not sure whether going beyond space-time and arriving at that sort of higher, let's say, discovery of consciousness, a universal consciousness, or that sort of universal mind, whether that is going to solve this sort of problem of our nature of reality and what it is all about. But I find it quite interesting to go through those ideas, concepts, and to see how we can bring in that sort of probably to interleave into those sort of various ideas and concepts as to the perspective of what we call the direct meditative experiences. Yeah. So I have become heavily involved in meditation for the last let's say 8 or 9 years, where I explore that sort of dimension of what is the direct experience of our mind and what is there. I mean, if we let go of all these notions of awareness, space-time, we let go of the form, let go of, let's say, all these perceptions, we let go of the idea that all this consciousness is. We even let go of the idea or the concept that the mind or that's mind objects and whatever that exists in our experiences. What is the kind of the underlying mechanism? And can we arrive at those sort of experiences where we can directly witness the root of all these sort of what is called the mental proliferation. So I would insert those perspective, those sort of direct experiential understanding throughout the exploration that I consider today. So hopefully this will be this will be of some value to you. So this is how I would like to proceed. So the framework I'm gonna just to give some sort of outline as to how I'm gonna proceed is I've got I have written like 13 pages of notes here. So so in 2004 this documentary appeared in Channel 4 in the UK, which was led by Sir Martin Rees from Cambridge University. So he's a a great cosmologist, and he produced 3 series with its grand title called "What We Still Don't Know." So that is, and in that documentary series, the first one is, are we alone in this universe? Second is, why are we here? And third way is, are we real? Yeah. So this is a really, and when I have probably watched this 10 or 15 times, this series, which capture my imagination and left me asking that sort of questions. Is it really the case that these 3 questions have really challenged my kind of all perceived notions, and it has fundamentally kind of changed my worldview as to whatever I was probably obsessed about. I was obsessed about these, let's say, alien planets, the sort of the universes that are beyond this universe and sort of around there, where there are completely new other disjoint universes that may have completely different physical properties, different laws of physics, where it might be the life forms may not be based on the metabolism that we take it for granted here in this universe. So it's sort of this documentary brought that sort of notion, is that we need to think outside the box. Whatever we are experiencing in this space-time fabric of this universe may not be the only universe. And he just had interviewed so many kind of scholars, scientists, explorers, to give that sort of very rich perspective of these notions of those those 3 areas that I just mentioned. And he very nicely put together those sort of in a very convincing manner, that sort of cutting edge views from those explorers, scientists, and that gave me a very kind of, I would say that it filled some of the vacuums I had in my worldview. And now that was quite satisfying at that time. Then I started to explore, it cannot be, there were some notions that were brought here by certain modern leaders, and that's a sort of let's say all the lines of scientists, explorers, who were kind of brought in that forum to support his views. Yeah, I would say that though that series is mainly aimed at convincing to the general public that biology and physics and cosmology and all these sort of discoveries that the scientists have progressed, they can answer all these fundamental questions of, are we alone in this universe? Why are we here? And are we real? So it's kind of the conclusion I came into from watching all these 3 documentaries was, it's basically he is concluding that we humans have come so far in answering those sort of questions, and we have managed to address them very in a rigorous and a very convincing manner. And we have got this notion of, let's say, space-time consciousness, and the sort of new challenges that are emerging in the sort of a field, like in a quantum entanglement, the spooky action and inner distance, and so on, where he has mentioned somehow that scientists are coming very, very close to answering those sort of questions that are seemingly remaining as a mystery at this time. Yeah. So, and that is his conclusion. It's been exactly 24 years, and while his line of thoughts may be convincing to 95% of scholars, scientists around the world, who are kind of who regard this science as the only tool to arrive at the truth. But that's I am probably one of the group of scientific explorers who can ask that sort of fundamental question. The reality that we see around us, we explore by means of these tools, by means of those discoveries, by means of those theories, will never gonna answer that sort of a reality which is intrinsically mental. Yeah. So, and if those scientific explorations really could make humans a step closer to being happier, not by means of that sort of let's say commodities, by means of those sort of let's say tools, but if the scientists can explore that sort of if they can answer that sort of the question to the problem of our mind and our inherent, let's say, suffering, that is that we have no way of coming to a solution, that if the scientific journeys can lead to the sort of complete end of our suffering that is inherently experiential, then it's kind of a this is a kind of a, my view is that fundamentally this physical is the sort of materialistic assumptions and materialistic approach is gonna be a kind of a non-starter. It is never gonna lead to that sort of a let's say a quenching, that sort of, or let's say the complete elimination of the inherent suffering that we have. So, and that is the kind of a bottom line I'm sticking into, and that sort of, I have got many reasons to believe that kind of whatever exploration and that sort of the kind of the path that is being undertaken is always is gonna be let's say we have got that sort of let's say we have got axioms there where the parallel lines they do never converge they have such properties that they will not kind of arrive at that sort of convergence. So this is why we need to somehow look at the problem from completely different perspective and look at the what is called the root cause of this all these notions and of all these problems. Yeah. So let me briefly go through this the key points from this documentary, what we still don't know. And I have collected some notes from this documentary, and the question about the documentary on why are we here. And this documentary is kind of a somewhat giving that sort of in a very derogatory perspective that whatever the let's say philosophical or the spiritual approach to kind of answering the human's quest are somewhat too primitive. They are fundamentally baseless. They are somewhat too naive in terms of their approach and etc. And this documentary is saying that that is not basically those are somewhat too rudimentary, and that's sort of very kind of unproven ways to arrive at the truth. And what this documentary is saying is that look at this cosmos, look at this kind of universe which is made of all these particles and elements which follow certain kind of path of the exploration that does not abide by the notion that you can do that sort of exploration of that sort of some sort of philosophies or that sort of spiritual pursuit to answer that sort of question. Yeah. So and that the support for this sort of notion is that kind of the science is based on a very good grounding, that it has got a means to explore all this reality on a very sound basis. And there are many discoveries that are proving that these the path the scientists are following are the only path. Yeah. So somewhat it's saying that the Greek had 4 great elements, and that 4 great elements do also occur in a kind of in Eastern let's say traditions. In Hinduism, in Buddhism, that sort of they do mention about the four great elements, and they are considered and they are seen as very, very primitive and a very raw representation of world, and they that sort of is too basic. It doesn't really represent the world. And this sort of notions that all these representation of material experience in terms of those atoms and molecules down to the subatomic particles, and having that sort of combination of different particles giving rise to that sort of let's say atomic structure, and atomic structure making that sort of molecules, and that sort of creating compound materials is the only established way to answer that sort of experience that we regard as material universe. And somewhat this even modern scientists like Donald Hoffman, who is a big proponent of consciousness, and that sort of trying to build a boot of space-time from consciousness. They seem to think that this representation of the material by those four great properties is too basic, and is too kind of a is basically they are laughing at this sort of ideas. But it's very what the people are missing, or they are not considering in this overall picture of our mind-body mechanism, is that these elements are not strictly what we call the earth, water, fire, and air elements. Earth, water, and fire and air elements, these are not that sort of a kind of some sort of a shapes, and that sort of, it's not about that. And people are saying that okay, you have got some matter that has got those four constituent. That is not the way to look at those material universe. Those material universe, we need to when we go through the experience of mind and our awareness in a very, very, let's say, much closer directly to the personal experiences, we can only make sense of those material universe in terms of those four properties. Those four properties are the properties of solidness, or the softness, what we call the tactile nature of those objects. And we have got objects which do feel like it does have that sort of property of cohesion. It start to coalesce or to start to break apart. That sort of property, that is the what is called the cohesive property. That is the second element. The third element is the heat, and is kind of having that sort of a experience of that heat and coldness, and some sort of an energy, we can call it that sort of in terms of having that sort of experience that register in our mind in terms of some feel for that sort of heat, some feel for that sort of cohesion, that sort of whether it is sticking together or it is expanding. And the sort of the fourth element is the air element, which has got that sort of expansion and contraction and that sort of movement. Yeah. So these four great elements are explained in terms of those properties. That any element you can call it any. It doesn't matter. People are thinking that these elements. Scientists have discovered 102 elements. Pure elements, and 92 elements in the nature, and that 10 elements have been made through some sort of let's say chemical reaction. So, and that is not a that is not a there is no kind of established there is no inherent, let's say, novelty in atomic structure of those elements. You can go through that sort of a process where you can develop an element with 200 protons, 200 neutrons, and 200 electrons, and it can completely give you a new property. That how do we make sense of that particular new element? you cannot get rid of these four great properties. You cannot get rid of this, solidness. You cannot get rid of this, cohesion. You cannot, without using these four properties, you cannot make sense of those, any new element, any new let's say, breakthrough. You can call it, all these sort of particles. Yeah. So that is the fundamental barrier. You always have to make use of those sort of four properties when it comes to our interaction with those material, stuff, or whatever notion we have. So it's not, it's not that sort of very primitive notion that, they had no clue about this, atoms and molecules, and they simply lump them into four great elements. So people are, make very, they can be so rash in making that sort of very, superficial conclusions. And what's more, and the scientists, like, and many physicalists, I mean, I would not call the particular names. There are many scientists who think that those atoms and molecules are like Legos, and when they are regular and when their patterns repeat, they constitute some sort of basic elements. And when those Legos and the sort of molecules and particles are made a bit more arranged in that sort of very complex manner, and that complexity gives rise to all these complex organisms like human beings and that sort of living creatures, and even consciousness comes out of that sort of complexity, which is completely, bit, it is overstating, over kind of stating the sort of abilities of physical discoveries. So I would say that it is a bit too preposterous to think that, organization of those particles and molecules gives rise to this sort of, biological creatures and consciousness. So it's kind of, it just, there is no solid ground as to, how those, atoms and molecules gives rise to consciousness, and I'll go through that a bit later. So that sort of things, it may have been a very good, let's say, a notion maybe 50 years ago, 100 years ago, but time has passed, and it just does not really stand any in terms of scrutiny as to how we can really answer that sort of question of our experiences, the sort of our inherent mind and consciousness can be brought into that sort of a very, very shallow framework of space-time and the sort of molecules and atoms. Yeah, so it simply, these are completely different domains, and to assume that the scientific exploration can overcome all these sort of challenges of our experiences is simply, it's just too I would say too rash to make that sort of very early conclusions. So and that's the it's not my view. It's just what the scientists are hitting a dead end. I mean, they are trying to prove that they can build consciousness out of, let's say, machines and from the computers, from that sort of a very intricate circuitry and that sort of a let's say electrons and that sort of a flow of digital switches, and they let's say, they can build trillions of transistors in a one circuit board and in a chip, and they are kind of making that sort of conclusion that that chip with a trillions of transistors can be conscious, and that can you know that can be a kind of answer to all this question of consciousness and our mind and that sort of our experiences. So and that is well, let's not go about refuting each other's kind of ideas, doctrines, and concepts. It's really the case that there is all this sort of thinking and the sort of a pursuit of exploration and the sort of a conceptualization is somewhat this is what is fueling this human race. Yeah, the survival of human race is guided by all these sort of notions, all this sort of exploration to keep our, let's say, activities and to keep our egos to flourish and to sustain our, let's say, our our that sort of images of how we think of ourselves in terms of always making that sort of progress and answering that sort of coming close to the reality. And that's what the scientists and all these philosophers, they like to be termed as, they like themselves to be termed as those kind of let's say those foremost at the cutting edge, who have been a beacon of kind of hope for the humanity. Yeah, which might I am not refuting that is the kind of wrong path, or we shouldn't do that. But if we take a step back and see where we get caught, where we are kind of at what point we went too far, where is our boundary, where is our that sort of, where in this process of our mind we went beyond the kind of let's say our boundaries. And I have got some previous recordings of this whole process of the mental proliferation and our direct experiential understanding, direct experiential observation of all these mental phenomena is where we go far, and we dive into that sort of run of never-ending loop of conceptual proliferation. And where is where does the our ultimate maybe I should not be saying this sort of thing, that that is the okay, let's say that there is a way, there is a perspective, there is in a kind of a state where all this proliferation, all these notions, they come to cessation, they come to stop, and we arrive at that sort of a state of peace, a calm, a composure, a piece of a place, an experience that is devoid of all these sort of notions, and that is the state of complete, say, a voidness, some sort of a state of not being conditioned. So the conditioning, letting go of all the conditioning, there is a process. There is a very well defined process that leads us, let's say, that takes us back to the kind of that sort of a state where we can directly see that there is a state, that is the state of peace, that there is a state of tranquility, there is a state of safety, there is a state of complete freedom from the universe. Yeah. So that's the kind of, that is the kind of a dimension I am keen to kind of let's say to bring about as a matter of exploring all these topics of the scientific explorations and the mind and body problems. Yeah. So mind and body problem is really bothering the humanity for thousands of years, and it is as most scientists and philosophers, they realize this mind and body problem is really the crux of our all this let's say our dissatisfaction, whatever we are experiencing, all this suffering, it is all rooted in this mind and body mechanism, mind and body problem. What is the reality? Where is that sort of kind of, where do we get completely disentangled? Where is that sort of a state of freedom? That is the, to my view, that is the ultimate kind of a question. Yeah. To this mind and body problem. Yeah. It's not the case of that we might explore this and we find some new solutions as to answering that sort of whether if it is a body or is it a mind that is more fundamental, and the vice versa. That is not a problem, and we might be trying to solve fundamentally wrong. We are trying to solve a problem in a fundamentally wrong manner. Yeah. So to my view and to my experience, that this mind and body problem boils down into where we, what is the kind of what is our kind of our inquiry, where did we go off tangent and we veered away from the reality of the present moment, and we started to that sort of completely caught in that sort of a completely conceptual proliferation. So and this is the kind of and this is the view I have. It's not a view, but it's kind of a perspective from the direct experience. Yeah. So, and in terms of what I was saying is that this documentary is basically it is going into many kind of let's say key discoveries in science that were made to unravel the state of universe through many kind of discoveries, the kind of the going through the subatomic particles, all the down to the kind of very basic, what is the kind of is it the kind of the when we reduce the particles and the molecules down to this, the most fundamental level, the that 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 line of inquiry has somehow hit the dead end, that beyond those particles, when the scientists have smashed those subatomic particles, they were hoping to find some even more fundamental, uh, let's say, entity that constituted that subatomic particle. Somewhat that sort of explored the line of inquiry went into somewhat completely, let's say, probably dead end might be might be okay to use here. So and what happened is that when these scientists, they broke this in these subatomic particles, and they tried to analyze what is beyond these sort of those subatomic particles, then they had run into a massive problem. They could not characterize all these kind of the, let's say, these phenomenon of a subatomic particle breaking in down to more fundamental constituent. Then they could not see these particles as being adhering to the same rule of those physical properties. Those particles do not adhere to the rules that we are generally accustomed to in terms of our notions of what we call the locality and the what is called unitarity. Yeah. So I will not go too much about this, these properties. So locality means that we have got the stuff. If we bring the stuff together, those stuff, they interact only if they are coming to the contact to each other. So that is the notion of locality, is that this hand can only affect this hand if they come close to each other. So this is this whole universe is guided by this rule of locality. Yeah. So you can switch you can press the button, and only after pressing that button, the whatever function whatever the movement, if you want to open the door, you have to press that. So you cannot press a button here and you cannot make something in Andromeda galaxy to be controlled from here. So it has to be local. So this is the fundamental property of physics. And another property of physics is the unitarity, is that if you break a particle into a piece, then it says that when that process, if you break it down, then the constituent of that particular process, the breaking down, always come to the constituent. When you add them together, it becomes the whole. Yeah. So say you have got a whole apple, and if you break it down, and all those the pieces that have been broken down, they must come to make up that whole. Yeah. So that is the kind of unitarity, and this unitarity, the property of unitarity, is in terms of the, I just gave the very simple example, and that property is saying that anything any phenomenon must follow that rule. And this is the foundation of physics. This is the foundation of all this universe, according to this material, the physicalist proponents. And when the matters are broken down into subatomic level, and if they are broken down further in the, let's say, in the Large Hadron Colliders, where they break these particles into even smaller pieces, and that sort of small pieces, all of a sudden these particles, they completely, all these notions go away. Those particles do not follow this locality and unitarity rules. And if you break one particle into two, and they become entangled. So if they are entangled, then we know, because they are correlated, they are because they were the same particle, let's say same before they were broken. That means they are entangled. So, and what the scientists have found is that when those particles are, let's say, smashed and sent into, let's say, one particle went to Andromeda galaxy and another went to another galaxy, no matter how far apart they are always they are entangled. That means they are dependent on each other. Yeah, and this is the very, very ghost-like notion that physics cannot answer, because it does not fall within the realm of physics. It just completely violates that principle. And somewhat that's why I'm saying the physics has hit the dead end, and it just doesn't know where to go next. What is the way out of all this mess? Yeah. So, and there are some very, very fantastic or speculative theories of those subatomic particles that that are not those small constituent, but rather they are some vibrating strings. And this string theory used to be in a big it captured quite a big press in the last 20 or 30 years. Somewhat this string theory also hit a dead end. I mean, it's just going nowhere. This string theory is speculating there will be, the string theory is saying that why we are not seeing these particles is because they exceed the three dimension of our physical world, and they probably, those constituent exist in higher dimension. So it's they are coming up with, that's a theory of 11-dimensional hyperplane, which they saying that okay, that's what the string theory is mathematically providing, that sort of and it's purely pure speculation. And current physics has no way of exploring that sort of realm of those vibrating string, which go to 10 to the power minus something like a minus 80 or 100. That's it's very, very small scale. And it's just now we can only anybody who is really looking at this kind of science of the empirical evidence, some sort of uh, means to explore those notions by experiment, did not buy this. They simply, this sort of theories are untenable because you can only fabricate them as some sort of concepts. Both those sort of notions, concept are as good as of some sort of you can have that sort of theory of divine experiences of going beyond the kind of higher dimension of divinity. You can bring them into same category. Yeah, those theories, if you have no empirical evidence to justify and that sort of show through some kind of means, then they are as good as those sort of hypothetical notions that they have no grounding in reality. Yeah, so that's why this those, and I do not hear much about the string theory nowadays, and I can really appreciate why this is now not coming into the to this kind of a wider public. It's just simply there is it's just a it's entanglement. It's completely it's a non-starter, shall I say? So and that sort of things, and this is the dimension where this physics is now starting to kind of come into that sort of impasse. Yeah, and on the other side, so now where is the kind of now let's flip the coin and go into the sort of a dimension of, let's say, our experiences are no more confined to a planet like a small planet like our Earth, and the scientists have made a very good progress, and they have found, let's say, galaxies, cluster of galaxies, and that sort of all these discoveries of the galaxies have made us think about this whether this universe is static or this universe is evolving. Yeah, so in terms of all or what is out there, so scientists have, I already given some overview of what is in the smallest scale, in the minutest atomic particle and so on. Now I'm exploring the kind of realm of what is out there. So this exploration of galaxies and the sort of in 19th century, I think 19 Edwin Hubble, and he discovered that these galaxies are not really, these are not at the same place. And what Edwin Hubble discovered was that when he measured the galaxy in one day and he measured the same galaxy the next day, he saw that galaxy has moved far away, even at the greater than the speed of light. So then he did some sort of mapping of all those galaxies that are in our let's see in the telescope. Then he started to put them together into that sort of let's say a context. Then he came up with that sort of a very good pattern, that those galaxies that are further to us than those galaxies that are nearer, those galaxies are moving much faster than those galaxies that are close to us. So he found that there is a pattern, and from that he discovered that this universe is expanding. Yeah, so we are not living in the static universe where all these moons and stars and galaxies, they are in a fixed location of space time, and then that turned all the scientific discoveries and that sort of a explorer, and they they had to come back to the drawing board as to, we thought that this universe is static, it's never changing, and it just follows that sort of simple rules that it just particles, matters, they kind of they are somewhat remaining in their constitution until they they do find their limit and they decay, and those particles, they just they have also got some sort of what is called the particles, although their life is, they do remain for inconceivable amount of time, but those particles also get destroyed. Yeah, so and that's sort of very static notions were prevalent at that time, and then this all of a sudden that discovery of universe, the galaxies moving away, got the imagination of all those scientists, uh, got captivated, and they were brought into that sort of rethink of the basic premises. Yeah, and they started to dig out what is happening, what is causing all these galaxies and stars to move away from each other. What's wrong with this kind of what's wrong with the Einstein's law of all these general relativity and that sort of things. That started to question the Einstein's notion of general relativity, and they found that this Einstein had put some sort of a constant to make this universe static, although he was highly kind of a surprised that his notion of space-time and that sort of general relativity was concluding that this universe has to be dynamic, that his equations were pointing towards that this universe must be moving, but because he could not become that sort of too radical, he wanted to remain acceptable within the scientific community. So to satisfy and to not to anger this community, he had to tweak that sort of constant. So he brought that thing called cosmological constant. This is a 10 to the power minus 90, some very, very tiny number. He brought that into the equation to make a static universe. And all of a sudden, the discovery from Edwin Hubble, which say that okay, these galaxies are moving completely. The further they are, the faster they are moving. Yeah, that brought this kind of our worldview into some sort of a drawing board. It just, we had to start from scratch. Is that this universe cannot be static, and that is the kind of a state that we are actually. If this universe is moving, then what is this, what is occupying this empty space? There must be some stuff. It just cannot be just the stars, galaxies, and all these sort of things. They count for very, very little, space in this universe. Where is all this? What is this emptiness consisting of? Then the scientists have had to invent the concept of dark matter. Yeah, so it's kind of saying, okay, because we cannot see, we cannot test it, we have no way of coming to contact with this object, which is the concept. They give it the name of dark matter. So that this dark matter is just a plug to kind of fill up the void that we have no way of understanding. What is this? So this dark matter is kind of just doesn't abide by any kind of rules of physics. It doesn't completely. It just dark matter is completely only. There has been some inferences as to what this dark matter is, in terms of what they have used some laws of general relativity to say that, okay, because I do not see this star in this location, because that star has been the space-time, and because they see that star not in that particular location but slightly distorted, it must be distorted because of the dark matter. Yeah, so that is the best kind of a theory right now to explain the dark matter. Yeah, so it's kind of that's the state of what this universe is right now. It's just that kind of it's fascinating, and it certainly raises interesting philosophical question as to if these things really goes this sort of universes, the galaxies and the stars and all those sort of things are really out there, and if they go infinitely, then surely that means that if they do exist, then that brings us the question of really what we are perceiving. We are not living in the real universe. It's just an imagination. It's just a fantasy. Yeah, because we have no way of being sure that we live in a very, very confined and well-defined universe. This whole universe is a fabrication. It just, since you cannot answer that sort of, you cannot be sure of what lies beyond this sort of, let's say those 13 billion light years away, and what is beyond that. So it's really this cosmos is just imagination. Yeah, it's just a pure kind of you can equate to this whole space-time as just it boils down to as simple as it's just a concept. Yeah, all this because you have no way of knowing what is the bound. If those bounds are fictitious, imaginary, then whatever we are experiencing in front of us is it must be the imaginary. Yeah, so that is why this is really challenging the notion that space-time, the matter, they are really existing fundamental property of this universe. And when you start to ask this sort of questions. It's just this the notion of space-time, let's say just notion of space and notion of matter, the galaxies, they just don't hold any ground. Yeah, they are just some sort of imaginary objects that is sustained by our imagination. Yeah, because we are thinking, we are labeling them in our perception, that if they are really existing, some sort of object out there in occupying this particular location of this universe, and they do really exist. But since we cannot define them, since we cannot say for certainty that there is a boundary of this universe beyond this sort of our sight, then we are really living in this sort of a very imaginary universe. Yeah, because we have no way of defining them. Yeah, so that's why even this even this kind of let's say looking at the grand scale of heavens and that sort of cosmology and that sort of things, it just doesn't hold any water. Yeah? It becomes, shall I say, it just doesn't, it doesn't close that sort of it doesn't give that sort of a satisfactory answer to that sort of our curiosity and that sort of, because we can refute them with this sort of simple thought experiment. Just this universe is a fake. Yeah, it doesn't have that sort of kind of a, let's say that a solid and also very immutable property to define that they are really out there. Just doesn't hold any water. Yeah. So I will not go much further in this. So I would probably want to say that it's a good good discovery, and we are finding that kind of that there are trillions of galaxies that are far, that really look like our Milky Way galaxy, and just we keep finding more and more stuff to fuel our imagination. That's all I'm going to say. So and now let's go into the question of reality. Then people, this I'm now touching on this second principle, second documentary of this Channel 4 documentary of this Sir Martin's Rees, What We Still Don't Know. And the second documentary is named as Are We Real? And this is really is spooking those people and the scientists. If we cannot define a subatomic particle, and if we cannot define those objects in the universe as being really persisting and objectively true entities, then what is our reality then? Is it, if they are really out there, then what is what we are seeing, what we are perceiving, what we are sensing? Are we seeing the reality as it is, or the whatever our reality that we are perceiving is just in imagination? So this is what this this documentary is kind of trying to explore, and this is again, because this documentary is coming from that sort of very fundamentally physicalist type of worldview, And this the scientist, Sir Martin Rees, he says that he is amazed that the entities like us who are fundamentally built of atoms and molecules can ponder and think about kind of about these atoms and molecules, somewhat something that is made of in atoms and molecules have developed some ability to think and ponder. And that sort of he's saying that we are, in his views, we are just a bunch of atoms and molecules, and because those molecules and atoms are built in such a complex and such a unimaginatively complex nature, that these molecules and atoms started to think, they started to talk, they started to conceptualize all these sort of intricate awareness, and that sort of experiences can actually arise from the atoms and molecules. That's what he's proposing, that we are just a bunch of molecules. And if I want to if we bring this sort of things to kind of modern scientists like Professor Donald Hoffman and Bernardo Kastroff, they will smash this notion. This is laughable. This is completely beyond ridiculous. Actually, it's just saying that to equate our experiences, our living experience as a bunch of molecules and atoms would be beyond absurd. And this is simply trying to characterize the experience in terms of quantities, or some properties. It's like we are trying to define this universe in terms of square foot or square miles, and all this many kilograms, and this structure of this many atoms and this many molecules, and that's all this universe is. This is the kind of they are trying to equate all this so much of richness of this universe of experience down to such a primitive experience, primitive parameters is beyond absurd. And this is simply not going to capture the reality, the complex reality that we are naturally made of. It's just simply is trying to define our experiences in terms of like two-dimensional of trying to show a picture of tiger and saying that tiger is this picture. Yeah, it just simply doesn't work. And that sort of things are, scientists have become somewhat, they started to use their authority a bit too much. They started to think that they are the only authority in this domain, that they can kind of keep all these experience into their hostage. Yeah, so it just, that sort of things are becoming now the kind of the, let's say, a mass, and the tide is turning, let's say. the idea. I mean, I would say that because I know this is a bit more, challenging the institution, and refuting this sort of established notion may not be taken, let's say, positively. And this is the thing, is that it might be to challenge these sort of notions, and may be considered a bit more kind of a radical, and but the I think this the tide is turning, and as I said, there is increasingly more and more people actually saying that, okay, these sort of things did not hold water, yeah, and there is a very good justification that that documentary is trying to give. I think he is showing that sort of a. I think Sir Conway. I think he was a professor at the Princeton University. He was a mathematician, and he seemingly wanted to prove that kind of all this thing called life can be built up from simple rules, like he invented that sort of a game called game of life. Basically, he put together two or three dots, and he made some rule. If these three dots, if they are close to each other, they become suffocated and they die. If they are too far, they die because of isolation. And if they are in the right distance, they mate and reproduce. And by combining this sort of let's say Lego of all these simple rules, seemingly it can generate that sort of very complex organism, like creatures that can move and that can crawl. And here you go. This is, see, life is you can see all this, you can put together all these things, and you put some sort of logics in a simple logics, and when these simple logics combine, they seemingly generate that sort of complex very, very interesting behavior that can replicate, or that can come very close to mimicking the behavior of living creatures. So it's kind of trying to bring up that sort of support for that sort of theory, that the life and consciousness is mere an artifact of complexity of those fundamental building block of this matter. Yeah. So that this, it was very interesting. I used to really like that sort of ideas. Now it's just I do not really see how that can answer the experiences that we have, the subjective experiences, the kind of the kind of awareness, the kind of the kind of the qualia. Yeah, it just that particular example is trying to show that you can bring that sort of a pattern, you can bring that sort of structure, you can bring dynamism, and they are trying to prove that having that sort of dynamism, that sort of complex kind of movement is life, simply. And that's what they are kind of trying to kind of sell, that sort of idea that you can probably one day you can all of a sudden you use that sort of some sort of some matter and some molecules and atoms, and you put those atoms and molecules in a lab, and all of a sudden the creatures will appear, and they start to crawl, and they start to talk to you. There you go. And that sort of things, they are saying that we are very close to creating the living beings from inanimate matters. Yeah, so it's very interesting, and it does sell very well again, among those community of physical discovery and sort of explorers who might want to explore that and make a career out of them. But it just becomes bit too much of I would say that these are trying to kind of step into that territory where you have no means to. It just doesn't fall into it. You cannot characterize the subjective experiences down into molecules and atoms. It just simply they do not. They are completely different domains. Yeah. So it's just are they correlated? Yes, they are correlated. They are correlated doesn't mean they are the byproduct that you can have that sort of you can generate consciousness from the machine. Yeah, it just doesn't work out that way. So having correlation does not mean having some sort of, let's say, cause and effect doesn't mean that you can produce that experience. You can. It's just those objects, those experiences are not in that particular matter. That experience is in this mind. Yeah, it is a domain that is completely separate. It is a separate domain of matter and mind. These are separate domain. But yeah, but there are interactions, there are correlation that you will get when the objects in this our sense experience are excited or been perturbed. Surely they affect mind. That does not mean that these objects and stuff they have got the experience. That simply doesn't work. And that's that is somewhat interesting, and that gives and in that sense that they are this documentary is refuting that sort of other kind of ideas that called anthropic reasoning. Is just anthropic. That means because all these experience they do arise because of our interaction, and that gives that sort of and they are refuting, or they are, let's say, I would say they are kind of making fun out of those faction of people who are considered anthropic, something who postulate that kind of all those experiences, all this matter and all this stuff, they do exist because of humans, because of the living creatures, because the living creatures are needed for them to be experienced. They started to think that it's because of those biological kind of processes. They are the forerunner, or they are the let's say they are the kind of front runner of all these things. So this is what the modern kind of theories of biocentrism is all about. Okay, I'll take a pause here.